This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Okay, good morning, Rabbi Glatstein. As we prepare for Shavuos Habalenu L'Tova, the Mishnah tells us in Masechta Tamid, and for those of us who were here last summer, we learned Masechta Tamid. The Mishnah says that in the Beis HaMikdash, the Kohanim had a very interesting practice. Aside from saying the three Parshas of Kriya Shema, they also added an additional Parsha, and that is, they said every single day in the Beis HaMikdash, the Aseres HaDibros. Every single day in the Beis HaMikdash, the Kohanim said the Aseres HaDibros. The Mishnah says in Tamid, Amar Lohem HaMamuneh, when the Veker would come, he would say, Baruchu bracha achas, make a bracha, Vehein Baruchu, and they made the bracha. Right? Karu Asara Hadvarim. They would say the Aseres HaDibros, Shema, V'hayim Shamoya, Vayomer, they would say Emes V'yatziv, Ritzei, Berkas Kayanim. So we see a very interesting thing. The Beis HaMikdash HaYakayim, the Kohanim in the Beis HaMikdash would say every single day the Aseres HaDibros as part of their morning service. Says the Gemara Brachas on Daf Yud Beis Amud Aleph on this Mishnah, commenting on the Mishnah in Tamid, V'koyrin Aseres HaDibros, Shema, Vayim Shamaya, Vayomer, Emes V'yatziv, Avodah Berkas Kayanim, Amar Rabbi Huda, Amar Shmuel, Af Bigvulin Bikshu Likros Kain. They wanted to be Mesakein, that even in Chutz La'aretz, outside of the Beis HaMikdash, that every single morning you should say the Aseres HaDibros. They wanted to be Mesakein that. Ela Shekvar Batlum Ibnei Tarumas Haminim. But they nullified this practice because of the complaints and the accusations of the Apikarsim. We'll have to see what were these accusations. Tanya Nami Hachi, Rav Nasan Omer, Bigvulin Bikshu Likros Kain, Ela Shekvar Batlum Ibnei Tarumas Haminim. Rabbi Barachana Savala Mikveinu Besura. Rabbi Barachana wanted to be Kaiveya, saying the Aseres HaDibros in Surah. Amalei Rav Chizda, you can't do it. Kvar Batlam Ibnei Tarumas Haminin. They already were Mavato. And now some Achron were Medayik, that actually they did institute it, and they wanted, in other words, basically what happened was, they started, at first, they didn't want to be Masakin it like the Gemara says in the beginning, right? Bigvul and Bikshu Likros. So they weren't masaking it because of Tarumas Haminin. But then later on, when there were no minin around, so they wanted to go be masaking it again. Rabbi Barachana later wanted to be Kaiveh, and Rav Chizda said no. They already nullified the practice, we cannot bring it back. Amimar Savar L'Mukvenu B'Nerda, Amalei Ravashi, Kfar Bitlam Ibnei Tarumas Haminin. Rabbi said, what are we worried about? What's the problem with saying the Aseres HaDibros? Zokt Rashi, Mibnei Tarumas Haminin. So that they don't say to the Amei Haaretz, by the way, the Noid of Yehuda is Medayik, who's the they?
Minin.
Who are the Minin? Look at the next Rashi. Akum. We're worried Goyim are going to tell Amei Haaretz, Ein Shar Torah Emes. All the rest of the Torah is not true. V'teidu, the proof is, look you Jews, the only thing you read is, Shein Karan Elamasha Amar HaKadosh Baruch Hu, V'shama Mipiv V'sinai. Why would you only read the Aseres HaDibros if Taryag Mitzvah Shamanu? If Torah Tziva Lanu Moshe, if Moshe taught all 613, why you will pick it on the Aseres HaDibros? So we're worried the Goyim will tell the Amei Haaretz that the only thing that's Torah, the only thing Hashem taught on Sinai is Aseres HaDibros, and therefore they did not allow this practice of laning the Aseres HaDibros outside of the Beis HaMikdash.
Who's they? Who's they?
The Chachamim, right? Big Shekvar Batlam. The Chachamim were mevatel this practice. By the way, if you look in the Yushalmi in Brachos, the Yushalmi enunciates exactly what we're concerned about. The Rav Masna of Rav Shon Bar Nachman, Tarvei and Amri, Bedin Haya Shayu Kairin Aseres HaDibros B'chol Yom. Really, logically, look, we say everything else in the world, the Man, the Akedah, the Azyashi. I mean, what don't we say every day? So really you should say Aseres HaDibros. Umibnei ma'in kairin oisan, mibnei tanos haminim, shaloi yehu oimrim, elu levadan nitnula lamoshe b'sina. Fine. Now, maybe you'll make the case, this was only in the times of the Gemara when you had real minim. Nowadays we don't have real minim anymore. They don't make minim the way they used to, right? We don't have the good old-fashioned minim, they don't make them the way they used to. So in the times of the Rashba, 1,000 years ago, Again, this issue was revisited. Maybe nowadays we should be masakein to say Aseres HaDibros every day. In the Teshuvas HaRashba, Chilak Aleph Sim Kuf Peidad, Sha'al Tamoid Mahu Loimer Aseres HaDibros B'Shachar B'Beis HaKnesses, L'fi Sheyesh Anashim Roitzim Lahanik Tzibur Kain. Some people want to establish this Minogue. Roy Lastis Kainim Lav says the Rashba Asur Lasos Kain. It is prohibited from this practice. Even though it says in Tamid, they did this every day in the Beis HaMikdash, says the Rashba, don't you know the Gemara in Brachos? Fine. So the Rashba, you see in the times of the Rashba, right? Something that was wrong always comes up sooner or later again. And the Rashba said he nipped it in the bud. He said you cannot be koveya the minog of saying Aseres HaDibros every day. That's why, Rabbi Glatstein, take a look in Shulchan Aruch, Siman Aleph, right? So even if you didn't make it that far, this far, right? Siman Aleph, Toiv Loimar Parsha Soakeda. I would add, it's also good to be there in shul. It's good to come in the shul in the morning. It's also good to be there on time. And then, if you're there, Toiv Loimer Parshas Akeda U Parshas Haman VaAseres HaDibros. It's a good thing to say that Aseres HaDibros. Says Ramah, V'dafka b'yachid Mutar Loimer Aseres HaDibros. Only an individual. Aval Aser LaOmram B'tzibur. You can't have the Chazan say Anoichi, and then everyone says Anoichi Hashem L'Kecha, right? And then Rabbi Shmuel Omer. You can't do it b'tzibur. You're not allowed to say Aseres HaDibros b'tzibur. In fact, Mishnah Berurah says, why? Number 7, Koifrim Sheyam Rein Torah Elazu. Says Mishnah Berurah, especially in our times, where there are a lot of minim. Now, the Mishnah Berurah quotes an opinion that it's only also to say it b'tzibur in Birchas Kriya Shema. Says Mishnah Berurah, we don't paskin that way. We paskin that you're not ever allowed to get together and say Aseres HaDibros b'tzibur. Now, let's take a look over here. See, this is the way a shul should be. But I would say in 95% of shuls, what do you have hanging on the Aron Kodesh? Aseres HaDibros.
It's down.
I didn't see it.
It's too small.
Are you allowed to have the Aseres HaDibros in a public display?
Why not?
Says the Magen Avram, B'tzibur, Mebnei Haminim, Sha'imrim, Ein Torah Elazu, Uvefrapis Manenu, V'lachein Ein Koisvin Oisai Al Kuntras Hamayuchad L'tzibur. You're not permitted to write the 10 Commandments on a kuntras in other words, in a public place. So here, at least in the English edition of this, they make the luchos the way our cousins of other religions hold the luchos are. They're rounded on top.
No,
Baruch Hashem,
it's not rounded.
in the Hebrew edition, it's correct. It's square.
It's square.
Okay. That's the way it should be. Okay. Now the question is, are you allowed to have in a public place luchos? Says the Magen Avram, Ein kois v'noisai al kuntras hamyuchad l'tzibur. Now, what is that referring to? What is a kuntras hamyuchad l'tzibur?
Siddur.
Does that mean you can't make a picture of it in a siddur? You can't put it on a chumash? You can't have it public? Says Shaus Teshuvas, the Churas Shai, Halacha l'maisa, it is prohibited to have any public image of the luchos. Why? Because the Gemara in Bracha says on Daf Yud Beis that the same way they wanted to lay in Aseres HaDibros b'tzibur, and they're mevatel it because Haram Saminim. So Kol Shekain, they have a public display of Aseres HaDibros. This falls under that category.
Why?
Because this is also why are you displaying Aseres HaDibros more than all 613. What's special about the Aseres HaDibros more than the rest of the Torah? The same way you're not allowed to lay in the Aseres HaDibros publicly, you're not allowed to display it publicly. That's what the Chura Shai says. So I thought only 95% of the shuls do it. Now we see 99%, right? He says the Chura Shai, Shaila, im kasher hadavar lichtav Aseres HaDibros b'koisel beis hakneses b'fnim, ay b'chutz, v'heishavti d'ilfidaiti aser Kamay debatlu kriyas aser sadibras b'tzibur v'mnei haminim shomer ein Torah lazu. Just like they're mevatel the practice of reading aser sadibras publicly. Ayin Magen Avram, who says, especially in our times, and therefore the Magen Avram says, you're not to write it on a kunshus hamiyuchad l'tzibur. Says a Chura Shai. If you can't lane it and you can't write it, uladaiti kol shekain lekasvan al kaisai galoi tamid. Here you have a guy, he can't even read Hebrew. He sits in the shul, he daydreams. So what's he going to be staring at for 3 hours? He's looking at the Aser Sadibros. What is he going to come walk away out of the shul with? He'll walk out of the shul that I don't know anything other than that there are 10 commandments. So this is a big problem. He says, V'shamati, he says, Odaiti kol shekain zeh l'kasan al koisel goloi tamid v'shamati da'ashav koisen Aser Sadibros koisel hakar shilen. Nowadays, in the irreligious houses, they have big displays of the 10 Commandments. So therefore, it says that we're not allowed to follow them. This is not a correct practice. One may not display Aser Sadibros publicly. So Rabbi said, what we would have to try to explain is, what's pshat in the Minogue Olam? I believe probably in every single shul that you'll ever go to, somewhere on the wall, there's a picture of the 10 Commandments. Right? So what is the basis? The Chura Shai says you can't do it. Let's talk about another practice. What?
I mean, the Torah talks about the Aser Dibot. So why the Minim is not going to go to the Torah and show them that he's reading the Torah?
But if you're going to make, if you're going to put special emphasis on the Aser Dibros, people
but the Torah mention it.
Where does the Torah mention it?
Moshe bring only the Aser. He didn't bring the Torah. Shebal Peh from the Shamayim. The Torah doesn't say this. So they can take the Torah and show them the Torah. Why you worry about?
But if they're going to show the Torah, but then once they're showing the Torah, you have the whole Torah.
But the Torah doesn't say about putting tefillin and make it
does. It says
where to put the tefillin? Where on your head, on your nose? Where to put the tefillin?
Okay.
So they can go to the Torah and tell them, look, here, you see the Torah say only Aser Dibot, just keep Aser Dibot.
But here, you see from the Gemara, we're very, very worried about emphasizing the Aser Dibros.
I mean, if they really wants to go to the Amei Aratzot, they will show it in the Torah
so let's
clearly.
See. Rabbi say,
why are we worried? Why do we care what they say?
And what we care what they say?
That's like, we're worried.
We don't care about their religion.
No, so the Gemara says, we're worried they're going to convince the Amei Haaretz that the Amei Haaretz are going to fall for them. Not every Jew comes to learn in the kollel, right? A lot of people didn't make it here today, so they're gonna, right? So a lot of people, they're gonna hear, oh, what's the Torah? The Torah is Aser Sadibros.
What's this word, Kor Shilin?
It's a bad place.
It's a temple.
It's a bad place. Don't go there.
The reform.
Kor Shilin.
Where is it?
The Kor Shilin?
Or the Akum, that Rashi says.
Rashi learns the Minim are Goyim. Usually Minim are not Goyim.
Right. So
If you take a look at the Noid Vihud on that, Noid points out normally Minim means Apikosim Jews. Here there's an exception. Rashi learns differently. So what exactly the Chash is? Rashi learns it's Goyim. Rabbi Sai.
No, Rabbi Glatstein, right now, I'm sorry to cut you off, but it was now when the Pope was in Israel.
Yeah.
So Chacham Ovadia gave to his son, before he passed away, when he met the other Pope, when he was a Rishon LeZion, he had the Luchot HaBrit made from gold.
Who?
He had the cross and the Luchot HaBrit.
Oive.
Yes. So before he died, he said, take it, you may use it one day. And now when he came to Israel, and they had that meeting, so he was wearing the Luchot HaBrit from gold.
Okay. Look, maybe the Pope should have given some of the people in Israel a yarmulke. You know? Okay. The Lamaisa, Rabbi Sai, the Chida says, let's talk about another practice. The practice is, what do we do on Shavuos, or Parshas Yisrael, or Parshas Vaschanan, when they're about to lay in the Aser Sadibros? They give a clap on the bima. In some places you have a guy who says, please rise, right? Yeah. And everybody gets up. Are you allowed to do that?
No.
Are you allowed to do that? Why aren't we worried that if you're going to stand up for Aser Sadibros, the same thing, people are going to say, only this was given from the Rebbeinu Shalom. And that's why the Chida says, you know how to do it.
So why they sell it so expensive?
What?
Why they sell it expensive?
You need an excuse to make money, right? But says the Chida, if we're so worried, if you can't lay in Aser Sadibros every day because of Tarumas Haminim, and you can't write it publicly because of Tarumas Haminim, how could you stand up? So says the Chida in the Shavuos Teshuvas L'David MS, Im Kalat Tzibur Oimdim Be'ez Kriyas Aser Sadibros, if everyone stands, Einoi Nachain, it's not right. If you have a few from guys who want to stand, okay, the majority of the tzibur is not standing, it's okay. No, not every shul. No, we'll see. So therefore the Chidah says it is not correct to stand. However, he does acknowledge the fact that there are shuls that it's a widespread minhag to stand. But says the Chidah, if you ask me my opinion, it's wrong. However,
but you can stand earlier than this. Not to stand after for this.
But why are you standing today? You don't stand by Parshas Balak.
What we used to do, we give this area to big rabbi. When rabbi goes, everybody stand up.
Yeah, but the thing is nowadays that people don't stand up for rabbis. People are thinking they have tarumas haminim, right? But so that's the problem. The problem says the Chidah, if you're so worried about tarumas haminim, then this is not a correct minhag to stand. However, is there a minhag to stand? We know there is a very, very well-known minhag to stand. The Shar Ephraim, which is one of the prominent works on Hilchos Kriyas HaTorah, he already brings down. Look at number 11 in Shar Zainos, Amud Zain, Kfar Bayarnu, B'Shar Daled, Shehat Tzibur Rashon, Leishev B'Shas Kriyas HaTorah. You're allowed, by the way, are you allowed to sit during laning?
Yes.
Absolutely, you're allowed to sit. It's a midas chasidus to stand. Some people are mahader, right? In the yeshiva, Olamai yeshivas they stand, but it's a hidur, it's not a chiyuv. Umikal Makom, says the Shar Ephraim, B'Shas Kriyas Aseres HaDibros, Nohagu Ha'oilem Lamoid. He acknowledges the fact people stand up. Okay. Now, says Rav Yaakov Emden in the Siddur of Yaakov Emden, Nohagu Lamoid Be'ez Kriyas Aseres HaDibros. There's a minog to stand. Now, Rabbi say, why would you stand for the Aseres HaDibros more than anything else? What these psukim don't have more kedusha than Upilaksha Yishma, right? Why would you stand for Aseres HaDibros? So the Rav Avadia brings down from the Sefer Shalmei Tzibur, who quotes the Chemdas Hayomim, who quotes the Arizal, that even though the Arizal holds not to stand during laning, on Shavuos you stand, because that's how Klal Yisrael were makabel the Torah be'amida. Okay, fine. But the Chidah said it's not correct to stand because of Tarumas Haminim. Just because the Arizal is giving you a good reason to stand, it doesn't mean you should. There was a good reason to lay Aseres HaDibros all over Eretz Yisrael also, and they were mavatal because of Tarumas Haminim. So a reason is not always a good reason. So the Chidah wants to know. Now we already established the Chidah wrote in the Sefer L'David Emes not to stand. However, he retracted a little bit because in the Sefer Toiv Ayin in Siman Yud Aleph the Chidah deals with the following question: Shaila, b'kam v'kom nagu am lakum k'shekar Aseres HaDibros Sefer Torah. In many places they stand. Parshas Yisroi, Shavuos, V'aschanan, and many were ma'arer. Many pointed out this is an incorrect minog because you should not make a differentiation between Aseres HaDibros and the rest of the Torah. And therefore they said, Rabbeinu Chidah, tell us what we should do. Says the Chidah that my opinion is that we don't have to worry about Tarumas Haminim. Why? What are we worried about but Tarumas Haminim? That if you're just going to lay Aseres HaDibros b'tzibur, people are going to think that's the whole Torah and nothing else. But on Shavuos, or on Parshas Yisroi, or Parshas V'aschanan, you're not just laning the Aseres HaDibros, you're laning the whole Parsha. So you're making it clear the Aseres HaDibros is not the end all. You're making it clear that there's more to the Torah than just the 10 Commandments. So says the Chidah, when are we worried about Tarumas Haminin? That's only when that's all you're going to do. You're just going to lay the Aseres HaDibros. But if you're laying it in the context of Kriyas HaTorah, the rest of the Parsha, then there's no problem. He says, V'imkein, second paragraph, 7th line, Hacha, Shekayrin v'Sefer Torah, Kol HaTorah midei Shabbos b'Shabbatai. These guys know that it's Parshas Yisroi. Last week you laying B'Shalach. Next week you're laying Mishpatim. Why would they think this is the only Torah? Ella, right? He says, the fact that you lane every Shabbos, and you lane before the Aseres HaDibros, and you're going to lane after the Aseres HaDibros. Elamai, why are you standing now? We know there's a concept, the Aseres HaDibros are the fundamental principles of the Torah. By the way, the Rambam says in Masech the Talmud that Aseres HaDibros contain in them Yesoidei Hadas. So therefore we stand. But we're not worried that if you're laning Aseres HaDibros in the context of a weekly Kriyas HaTorah and in the context of the Parsha, and therefore says the Chidah, Uvazeh, Loi, Yesh, Kapeda, therefore it is okay. And Rav Moshe Feinstein, Zechazak Bracha, and Chelek Daud, or Chaim Simcha Pes has a famous tshuva, where he, you know who asked him the question? Somebody by the name of Rav David Feinstein, his son. And Rav David wants to know, Tata, are you allowed to stand for Aser Sadibros? What about the Gemara in Brachas and Daf Yud Beis? Shekvar Bitlam Ibnei Tarumas Haminim, and Rashi says we're worried that the Amei Aretz don't think this is the only Torah. So, says Rav Moshe, if you're worried that by standing for the Aser Sadibros, people are going to think that this is the only Torah, then says Rav Moshe, you should know that there's a sefer called Likutei Maharich. You ever hear Likutei Maharich? Who he brings down a reason. Why do we stand for the laning of Shavuos? Because the pasuk says, "Vayamdu meirachaik." Says Rav Moshe, that would not be a good answer, because "Vayamdu meirachaik" is just a reason to stand, but reasons are not good reasons, because they had a reason to be masakein aser sadibros begvulin also, and they were mavatal it because of the minim. So just because the Likutei Marich came up with a good reason to stand, and that is to commemorate Kabbalas HaTorah, but we should be worried about Tarumas Haminim. But Rav Moshe says, what you said, what you answered, my dear son, is a good answer. What was Rav David's answer? Rav David answered like this, that nowadays there are a lot of things we stand for. We stand for Az Yashir. We stand on the 7th day of Pesach. So what do we see from there? Did anybody ever say, how could you stand for Shiras Hayam? But maybe people are going to think the only Torah is Az Yashir Moshe. No. You're standing L'Kavod Shel Nes. You're standing to honor the miracle. So too by the Aser Sadibros, you're not standing to say that these psukim have more kedusha than other psukim. You're standing because these psukim mark the time that the Rebbeinu Shem gave the Torah to Klal Yisrael. So you're not standing, by you standing, you're not saying these psukim are more important or have more kedusha than any other psukim. You're just standing l'chvod HaTorah. But then Rav Moshe says a very important thing that you have to remember for the rest of your lives, or at least till tomorrow. He says like this. He says, look on page 2, on the left-hand side, about halfway through, the first word on the line is Shehaminim. Says Rav Moshe, B'kivan shezehu inyan acher, einoi b'chlal ma shebatlu hakriya. Delefizeh ein ledamois milsa lemilsa besvaris. Ella ein lechaboy ela ma shenesar kvar v'loy lemelef mizeh davarcha. Says Rav Moshe, do we have minim today? Maybe yeah, maybe not. Not the same way. So therefore like this. We do not, when the Gemara tells us, don't do something lest you, we don't extrapolate and say, well, if you can't lay Aser Sadibros B'tzibur, therefore you also can't stand for the Aser Sadibros. That's extrapolating. That's saying, well, if the Chachamim made a gzera about case A, we're going to say it should also apply to case B. No, we have no right to do that. The Chachamim gave a limited gezerah. We have no right to extrapolate and say, well, we think it should also apply in this case. Says Rav Moshe, we don't have a right to do that. Whatever Shas says you can't do, you can't do. But you can't take the decree of Shas and say, well, I feel it should apply to a similar case. We're not authorized to do that. The Shas is chatum, it's sealed. We cannot, by extension, just because we think, well, I think it's a similar case, if it's the exact same case and it falls under the same category, or if we're actually worried about minim saying this bizman hazeh, then we need to be worried about it. But if it's not a real chash, it's just, well, we have to be mekayim what the Gemara says, so we'll be mekayim what the Gemara says where the Gemara said it. The Gemara never said you can't stand for Aser Sadibros. By the way, I believe that this Svara of Moshe would answer the Minogue Olam of why we have the luchos or the Aser Sadibros on the walls of the shul. We asked, how can you have the luchos Aser Sadibros on the walls of the shul? Why aren't we worried? If you can't lane it publicly, then how could you post it on the wall? The answer is, the Gemara said you can't lane it publicly. The Gemara didn't say you can't post it on the wall. We on our own are going to extrapolate, well, if you can't lane it publicly, then you also know. We're not authorized to do that. We follow Rav Moshe's klal, ein ledamois milsa lemilsa, therefore, you're allowed to stand for the Aser Sadibros. Says Rav Moshe that
And what about to hang it in the shoe?
Says Rav Moshe, and even for these frum guys who are worried about standing because people are going to say that this is the only Torah, so what are they going to do? They're going to sit? Well, 90% of the people are saying they're going to sit. They're not fixing anything. Still, the majority of the people are standing. So them sitting is not Elamai. They don't want to take part in this custom. So they don't want to take part in this custom. If you're really worried about it, says Rav Moshe, let them stand for the whole laning. However, says Rav Moshe, Medina, one is not allowed to be Mavatel, the Minogue, of standing for Kriyas HaTorah. Fine. So we learn.
For the whole laning on Shavuos. They should stand for the whole.
Okay, if they want to, but you're not mechuyev to, it is permitted to stand specifically for the Aseret HaDibros. Rabbi Glatstein. On the other hand, even though we've just gone through many, many sources that there are concerns lest people say that this is the whole Torah, nevertheless, we do find there is something unique and special about the Aseret HaDibros. There's no question that the Aseret HaDibros does have an elevated status. Otherwise, if it didn't have an elevated status, why would they be laning it in the Beis HaMikdash every day? They don't lane Be'ela Toldos Nayach every day, right? They don't lane about the Mekalel. They don't lane about the Mekoshesh every day. They lane that says, what's special about the Aseret HaDibros? So now take a look. Says the Medrash, Sheish Meos Ushloish Esrei Mitzvahs Klulos Lahen. All 613 mitzvahs are included in the Aseret HaDibros. V'chein at Moitzei, this is Oyam V'Noira, Sheish Meos Ushloish Esrei Oisios. There's 613 letters. Min Anoichi Ad Asher L'Reyacha. You hear this? There's 613 letters until Asher L'Reyacha. And Asher, so now the question is, how many letters total in the Aseret HaDibros? You have 613, and then Asher L'Reyacha is another 7, 620. Keneged what? Keneged Sheish Meos Ushlosh Mitzvahs, 613 letters. Keneged Sheish the Mitzvahs. V'Sheva Yiseros Keneged Shiva Simei Bereshis. And 7 extra letters, Keneged the 7 days of creation. Lilamedcha Shekal Ha'olam Lo Nivra Ela B'Schus HaTorah. To teach that the world was created for the Torah. You hear this? Every Jew has to know. There's 613 letters in the Aseret HaDibros plus 7. What are the extra 7? The Medrash says the days of the week.
So it also shows it's for Noch.
We're going to see. Very good. By the way, says the Medrash, that's what it means, that the Torah is Malaya Ketores. Ketores, if you take the Kuf and you atbash it, Kuf exchanges with a Dalid. Dalid, Tores is Taryag. Dal is Taryag. Dalid is 4. Tores, Taf, Reish, Taf, Tes, Reish, Taf is 609. So Kit Tores, but exchanging the Kuf for a Dalet is 613. The Torah is Malaya, Ketores says a Medrash. You take the Kuf, you make it a Dalet, 613.
Torah,
yeah. So now we're learning something amazing. Until Asher L'Reyacha is what? 613. The 7 extra letters are Keneged the Yemais HaShavua. Says the Baal HaTurim a little differently. How many letters in the Aseret HaDibros? 620. 613 Keneged the mitzvahs for Klal Yisrael. Asher L'Reyacha, Zayin mitzvahs, B'nai Noach. If you have all 620, you have Keser.
620.
Keser is 620. Keser is 620. By the way, Rabbi Yosef Chaim Sonnenfeld says, 620 Keser, there's 620 brachos that you say in Shemona Esrei over the course of the week. Not going to get into that now. That's why on Shabbos by Musaf, which is the 620th one, we say, Keser Yitnu L'cha Hashem Elokeinu. Okay, but says the Baal HaTurim, Keser is the 620 oisios of Aseret HaDibros. 613 is what? The mitzvahs. 7 is the Zayin mitzvahs B'nai Noach.
Aren't the Zayin mitzvahs B'nai Noach included in the 613?
It's a separate. Yeah, we are obligated in the Zayin mitzvahs B'nai Noach, but it's a separate giving. It's a separate nesina. It's a separate nesina. The Goyim have 7 mitzvahs B'nai Noach, and they have different halachas of them. Their Zayin mitzvahs B'nai Noach is less than a shal pruta. They're chayiv misa. It's a different Torah, right? Fine. By the way, the Pri Megadim in his Hakdama to his commentary, he has something called the Psicha Kailelas. He brings it down this Baal HaTurim, and how Keser are the 613 mitzvahs, and Asher L'Reyacha is the mitzvahs B'nai Noach. Comes the Chassam Sofer and he says, no. The Zayin Asher L'Rayach are not the Zayin Mitzvahs B'nei Noach. They're what? They're the Zayin Mitzvahs D'Rabbanan. They're the Zayin Mitzvahs D'Rabbanan. Right? Look at number 19. Asher L'Rayacha. Oisi Oy Shal Aser Sadibres Hema Kaminyan Keser. Kaminyan Taryag Mitzvahs Hashem Mitzvahs D'Rabbanan. Says the Chassam Sofer in the letters Asher L'Rayacha, you have Merumas there, all the Zayin Mitzvahs D'Rabbanan. How? Aleph is Avelos. Right? Shivas Yimei Avelos is Mitzvah D'Rabbanan number 1. Shin is Simchas Chasam Nekala, Sheva Brachos is 2. Reish is Rechitza, Netilas Yadayim. L'Reyacha, Lamed is Lechem, Pasakum, Bishalakum. Reish is Reshuyos, Eruve Chatzeres, Shitufei Mavais. Ayin is Megillas Esther. Right? You got it?
Sure.
Right? Ayin is Megillas Esther. Ayin, how's Ayin, right? No. And it says Ayin is Amalek, and Megillas Esther is Amalek, and Kuf is Chanukah, right?
Of course.
Why? Because Chanukah came about idea the Kohanim, and Kaf is Chanukah the Kohanim. So it says the Chassam Sofer, the Zayin, the 7 extra are not the Zayin Mitzvahs B'nei Noach, they're what? The Zayin Mitzvahs Rabbanan, and we have over here, there is a big machlokes between the Gedolei Hadoros and the Kubalim. What are these Zayin, what are the extra 7? The Ramah, the Shla, Megala Amukos, and we can add the Chassam Sofer, they say it's the Mitzvahs Rabbanan, and the Balaturim says it's the Zayin Mitzvahs B'nei Noach. Now, by the way, Rabbi Isai, this is a good one. If you count the Zayin Mitzvahs Rabbanan and the Zayin Mitzvahs B'nei Noach,
It's 14 in one.
You get how much?
613.
627.
Yeah.
What's 627? Meir Shalom, the complete light. Meir Shalom, the complete light is 627. That's my son's name also. 627, yeah? So if you add the Zayin Mitzvahs B'nei Noach and the Zayin Mitzvahs Rabbanan, you get 627. Fine. This idea...
The drush are very similar, but it's Lahan Chelach Tzadik, Ohav Yesh. The word used in Shem is 310. So it's 620 mitzvahs. You share half with your wife. That's why it says, also the Tzadik, 310 alone.
Very good, very good.
Same exact thing.
Very good, very good. So now, Rabbi Isai, this idea that the 613 mitzvahs are merumas, are alluded to in the 600 in the Aseres Hadibros, is something that is brought down, has been given over the Messiah from the times of Moshe Rabbeinu through the Dairais, how all 613 mitzvahs are merumas in the Aseres Hadibros. We have over here from the Tziyuni al HaTorah, Reb Nachum Tziyuni, one of the Kadmonim, Gedolim Mekubalim, the Chidah quotes him. He writes that this idea is that he says the Chashar Mispar Yud Kol Kol Misparim, just like the number 10 has in it all numbers, so too the 10 commandments has in it Kol HaTorah Kula Umitzvah Saseh Mitzvah Sloi Saseh, all 613. He says the Chashar Kiblu HaMekubalim Ish Mi Pi Ish Ad Moshe, that the Mekubalim have a tradition going back to Moshe that all 613 are merubas in the Aseres Hadibros. I'll bring you many rayas to this idea. First of all, we know that Moshe Rabbeinu broke the luchos. Why did he break the luchos? Anybody know? Why? Says the Gemara, "My Darash, Kal v'chomer." If Korban Pesach, which is only one of the 613 mitzvahs, the Torah says, "Kol ben nechar lo yechal boy." Right? So I mean, someone who is an Oved Avodah cannot eat Korban Pesach. So Kol HaTorah Kula, certainly you can't if you serve Avodah Zarah. So what did Moshe do? Right here, the Kal v'chomer. If even one mitzvah you can't do if you're an Oved Avodah Zarah, certainly Kol HaTorah Kula. And therefore Moshe says, I'm going to destroy. He didn't destroy Kol HaTorah Kula, he just broke the luchos. You see from the Gemara that by breaking the luchos, it's considered like he broke all 613. And by the way, that's what the Bavli says. The Yushalmi says it straight out. That when Moshe made the Kal v'chomer, he said, "Uma," in number 23, "Ma in Pesach shehi mitzvah yechidus never by kol hara lo yechabay ha-Torah shekol ha-mitzvahs klulos ba'alach v'kamakam." Another raya. Rashbam says on the Haggadah, "Ilu kervanu lefnei har Sinai v'loy nasan lanu es ha-Torah." Says Rashbam, what does it mean v'loy nasan lanu es ha-Torah? Not he didn't give us the Torah. If he would have brought us har Sinai and not given us the luchos, which the whole Torah is in it. And of course we know the famous Rashi in Parshas Mishpatim, look at number 27. Says Rashi, Kol Sheish me'os, ushloish, esrei, mitzvahs, b'chlal aser sadibretain. Where does this come from? Rabbeinu Sadia Piresh Be'azharos. Rabbeinu Sadia composed the special piyut. Sheyasa l'chol dibur v'dibur mitzvahs hatuis. Where Rabbeinu Sadia Gaon wrote how which mitzvahs are merumas and which are the dibros. I'll bring you another raya. The melech is required to carry a sefer Torah with him wherever he goes and hold it in his hand, right? Now the Gemara in Masechta Sanhedrin talks about how he had two sefer Torah, and one of them he held in his hand. So, by the way, the Marshal wants to know how in the world did he hold a sefer Torah in his hand? So Marshal says it must have been written like a mezuzah. Says Tosfos, he didn't have a sefer Torah in his hand. He had on a parchment the Aseres Hadibros. And the Aseres Hadibros is Taryag Mitzvahs, is Kol HaTorah Kula. Look at number 30. V'shamati. Ki oisei sefer Torah tali b'zraya lo haya kasav bahi ki im Aseres Hadvarim ulefi sheyesh min anoichi ad reyacha Taryag oisiyos keneged Taryag Mitzvahs kari sefer Torah. So it's very interesting if you think about it. Then on the one hand we're saying, no, you can't learn that Aseres Hadibros every day. People are going to say that's all there is. You can't maybe stand. You can't display it publicly. Minim. But on the other hand, we do say that the Aseres Hadibros does have an elevated status. The whole Torah is in there. And in fact, the Melech has to carry the Sefer Torah with him, but only the Aseres Hadibros. When Moshe broke the Luchas, that's breaking the whole Torah. So how do we sort of reconcile this dichotomy? That on the one hand, we don't want anybody to think that Aseres Hadibros is all there is, and yet we ourselves say that the Aseres Hadibros is the whole Torah. How do we reconcile that? So it's a very simple thought. I heard from Rabbi Yonason Sachs of Beis Medrash Landers. What do they call it? Beis Medrash L'Hayra, or Beis Medrash L'Talmud, right? Say it like this: that as psukim in the Torah, no pasuk has any more kedusha than any other pasuk. Bereshis bar Elokim has just as much kedusha as Ubnei Dan Chushim, Ushmai Reuma. They're all the same. But the psukim of the Aseres Hadibros have in them a representative quality. They're not holier. They're not more important. It's just they represent Kol HaTorah Kula. So on the one hand, we don't value them more. We don't say they have more kedusha. They're not any more or less Torah than anything else. But they do have a certain quality that other parts of the Torah don't have, and that is they reflect the rest of the mitzvahs more than other psukim in the Torah. Now, Rabbi Say, let's get a little. Now we get a little.
We stand up because of the reflection.
Okay, so we stand up because of what they reflect, and also because to commemorate Kabbalah Torah. Now, we're going to get a little controversial here. Are you allowed to stand up? Bottom line. Are you allowed to stand up for the Aseres Hadibros? So we said, look, the Chida wanted to say no, but then Rav Moshe said, look, you can't extrapolate one Gzera to another. And then we found something called the Teshuvas HaRambam. Now you have to know about the Teshuvas HaRambam. That Rabbeinu Ovadia Yosef, Zechatzak Avracha, writes that whatever the Teshuvas HaRambam says, we follow it absolutely, even against the Shulchan Aruch. Why? Says Rabbi Ovadia, because the Bet Yosef, Beis Yosef did not have the Teshuvas HaRambam. If he would have had the Teshuvas HaRambam, he would have retracted. Even though Rabbi Ovadia usually doesn't use that. Rabbi Ovadia would not say, Rabbi Ovadia says clearly, that the Chida wants to say that had the Beis Yosef known the Arizal, he would have retracted. Rav Ovadia says, no. Doesn't. The Beis Yosef maybe would have argued on the Arizal. Beis Yosef would have argued on the Shas Chus Min HaShamayim. But not the Rambam. We know the Beis Yosef always follows the Rambam, especially if nobody argues. So what does the Teshuvas HaRambam say about this custom? Teshuvas HaRambam writes that it is Asur Midina de Gemara to stand for the Aseres Hadibros. You have to be moicha against those who stand. The goyarin, but you have to scream at people who stand. What do they do by Sfardim? Do they stand?
No.
Yeah? What? No. Says the Teshuvas HaRambam. Says the Rambam. In Bavel, that's the Minogue. Minogue. It's not a Minogue. Let's say you say, oh, look at all these people in the hospital. They're sick. So that's the Minogue. The Minogue is to be in the hospital. No. Try to get them out. try to save their lives. Right now, right? Like Rav Vadia likes to say, right? Minogue is oisius gehenim. Not every minogue is correct. Says Rav Vadia, just because people are doing it, it's not right. You're not allowed to do it. The Rambam holds you may not stand for Aseret HaDibros. Look at number 31.
Whatever happened to a Minogue
Minogue saying to be Adenu is only if it works out with the halacha, but if it's against the halacha, you can't. Look in the Rambam. Rambam says number 31. What?
The halacha is Minogue.
No, the halacha is, the Minogue is the halacha, right? Look in the Rambam. The Rambam says, Shaila, Alamidas b'nei adam eis kriyas aseret hadibros, yeshech min hachachamim shetziva b'zeh. Some say you should stand. V'yesh mishamana zeh, v'heviraya. Some say you can't do it. From the Gemara of Batlu, Kriyasim, and Kriyashma b'nei haminim, shayoimrim sheish lam yisran al shara Torah, v'omer b'harashish kalesha sheyam v'yisekriya, aseret hadibros, the Sefer Torah, roi ligar boy. The Rambam brings down an opinion who wants to say you should scream at them. You're making yourself like an apikaris. Says the Rambam, what do I say? Tshuva zeh shazachar hachacham echad mehayeshiva beis akriya hu aroi. This that this chacham mentioned, v'rayasav kol mamitim kfidas anshe eros. He is absolutely correct. In any shul that they stand, you have to stop them. Because people are going to become apikarsim. I Minogue. Says Rambam, Eina klum. It's worthless. Why? Let's say you see people who are sick. The minhag is to smoke. It's a minhag to smoke, right? Let's kill ourselves, right? No. Why should we? No such thing as a minhag, right? Rather, no. The job is not be sick like them. Try to make them healthy. And therefore, the Rambam paskins halach l'maisa. Not only should you not stand, you're obligated to stop people from standing. So comes Chacham Ovadia. Chacham Ovadia says, in Yavia Omer Chelik Beis Yardei Simat Hazayin Ois Gimel, that he quotes the Teshuvas HaRambam, and he says 3 lines from the end, V'vada sheyesh lachar shedavei HaRambam ano. There's no, don't show me achroinim. Don't show me, this achroin says. The Rambam says you can't stand. There's no achroinim. If the Rosh and the Rif argued, fine. The Rosh doesn't say anything, the Rif doesn't say anything, the Rambam and the Yad doesn't say anything. So of course you follow the Rambam. Says Rav Avadia in Yichav Adas, look at this. The question is, Hanoigim Lamoid, Aragleim, Be'ez Kriyas Aseret HaDibros, B'chag Shavuos, is it good or not? Yeah? So any Sfardim here in their shul stand? Don't be afraid. Right? So all the Sfardim sit? Yeah? All Sfardim sit? Ashkenazim, yeah? We all stand? Anybody here down Ashkenazi shul where they don't stand? Anybody here ever down in an Ashkenazi shul where they don't stand? No. So Rav Vadia says it's wrong. Comes Rav Vadia. He says the truth is that a lot of Sephardic poskim say you're allowed to stand. Namely, Rav Vadia Hoydaya, one of the Gedolei Poskei Sfarad. And his father, Rav Shom Hodaya. But says Rav Vadia, what can I do? There's nothing I could do. They didn't see the Teshuvas HaRambam. The Shas Teshuvas Yaskel Avdi quotes the Teshuvas HaRambam, and he still is Mekayim the Minogue. B'mechilas kvay tayrasam ein devar mechavaram lahalacha. Says Rav Vadia, what can I do? They're great men, but they're not correct. V'lchein ha'ikar b'zeh sheyesh limchais. So Vadia, this is not a time to be, you do your thing, I do my thing. No. When it comes to chshashas of apikarsos, somebody wants to stand, you got to throw tomatoes. No, he doesn't say throw, he just says scream, right? But me, Shamir Kriyas says this. Especially if in the shul, the rabbi's sitting, and you're going to be the balgaivanik and stand. Mikoshikem b'makam shamicham yoshvim. Yesh limchas, it's gaiva. And he says, but what if the person getting the aliyah is the rabbi? Then you should stand right as he gets called up, So it shows that you're not standing up for the Kriya, you're standing up for the rabbi.
Is that where the minhag came to give the rabbi the aliyah?
I don't know. Maybe.
And the rabbi always gets the important aliyah.
So Rabbi say, so the Sfardim who sit are certainly on very firm basis. The Rambam says you're not allowed to stand. Rav concludes that way. So now the question is, us Ashkenazim, what basis do we have to stand? So you say, well, the Gemara, well, we rely on Rav Moshe. Rav Moshe says, just because the Gemara says you can't lane the Torah publicly, I says it is publicly, right? Doesn't mean you can't stand. Fine, I understand that. I understand Rav Moshe says you can't extrapolate. But Rav Moshe can't argue on the Rambam. The Rambam says you're not allowed to stand. So what do we Ashkenazim do? So I saw in the Sefer, Harei Kedem. Harei Kedem are Shiurim of Michal Shurkin, who heard Shiurim from the Rav. And I heard from a very reliable source that this comes from Chaim Brisker. Mamish Go'inus. Okay? What we want to know is, we Ashkenazim, we also follow the Rambam. Nobody argues. How can we stand for Aseret HaDivros when the Rambam says you're not allowed to stand? Right? That's the question. Look at number 34. Minogue Pasha B'chol Yisod Shebishah Shekarna Aseret HaDivros Kalam Oim Demaragleim V'yesh L'Tmaya B'zeh V'masha Pasuk HaRambam B'Teshuvas. Somebody asks that some say you're allowed to stand, some say you're not, and the Rambam concludes you need to stop it. You need to be moicha. So v'tzorach biur minog ha'olam asher keneged Teshuvas HaRambam. What's pshat and what people do? So Rabbi, if you have a Chumash in front of you, it's kedai to open it up to Parshas Yisroi, and that is something that we're all familiar with. The trop of the Aseret HaDivros. There's something called Tam Elyon and Tam Tachton. What's the difference between the Tam Elyon and Tam Tachton? Well, in the Tam Tachton, you say loy sir tzach, loy sinaf, loy signov. It's loy sir with a saf, loy sinaf, loy signov, loy saaneh, loy sir tzach. In the Tam Elyon, it's loy tir tzach. It's ta ah. In Tam Tachton, it's sa ah. Why? In the Tam Elyon, it's in the Tam Tachton, it's
How
we get to this?
You'll see. For example, in the Tam Elyon, the Bir Halacha on your sheets, in number 37, he brings down, let's say in the second Dibra, Loisasa Lo Yelecha Elohim Acherim Al Panoi in the Tam Tachton. In the Tam Elyon, it's Al Panai. Another difference is V'asisa Kol Melachtecha in the Tam Tachton, and in the Tam Elyon it's Chol Melachtecha. So you say, what are these differences? Why are there differences between Tam Elyon and Tam Tachton? The answer is, the Tam Tachton is breaking up the Aseret HaDibros into psukim. It doesn't, not breaking it up into 10 commandments. Every pasuk is a pasuk by itself, and therefore, Anochi Hashem Elokecha Asher Tzisichom Eretz Yisrael Mibeis Avadim. End of pasuk. But the Dibra is not over yet. Doesn't matter. We're not leaning Dibros in the Tam Tachton. We're breaking it up into psukim. Lo Yelecha Elohim Achirim Al Panoi. The pasuk is over. Whenever you have a soif pasuk, a patach becomes a kamatz. Al Panoi. Right? Fine. Then we go to Shabbos. Zachas Yom HaShabbos L'Kadshoy. Why are we pausing? It's still in the middle of the Dibra of Shabbos. We're breaking it up into psukim. Sheishes Yom Tavoid. V'asisa. Kama. What trop is under? Sheishes Yomim Tavoid. V'asisa Tipcha. Pause. Kol Melachtecha. The kol retains its dat. But, let's say, Loi sir tzach, loi sinaf, loi signov, loi sanav re'achei shakar. That's one long pasuk. If it's one long pasuk, it's loi sir tzach. Why is it sir tzach with a saf? Because there's a rule that whenever a letter that normally takes a dagesh is preceded by a vowel, it drops the dagesh. Loi ends with an aleph. The aleph causes the taf to drop the dot. Loi sir tzach. Why is it tzach? Because it's the middle of a pasuk. Loi sinaf. Why loi sinaf? Because the taf is preceded by an aleph. That's the tam tachton. Why are we breaking up loi sir tzach loi sir? Why is that one long pasuk? Because we're not breaking it up into dibros. We're breaking it up into psukim. Chameleon is not breaking it up into psukim. It's breaking them up into the 10 commandments. You could have one commandment which is very long. Shabbos. Shabbos is one long pasuk. In the Tam Tachyon is pasuk. Pasuk. Chameleon is saying no. We're maintaining it as a dibra. As a dibra, these 5 psukim is one pasuk. That's why in the Chameleon it's because sa, it's like it ends in a hey, so the chaf drops sa, and la tirtzach. How could we stop there? It's not a pasuk. You can't have a 2-word pasuk. We're not breaking it up as a pasuk. It's a command by itself. So therefore, it's loy tipcha. You pause after the loy. And therefore, since you pause at loy, the taf retains its dot. Loy, pause, tinaf. It's not a pasuk, it's a dibra. Got it? Tam tech tachtoin are psukim, tam elyoin are dibros. Now, when do we lay in the tam tachtoin? When do we lay in the tam elyon? So, many achrayim, if you look in the Ber Hetev, the Mases Binyamin says, on Shavuos, when you're commemorating Kabbalas HaTorah and the Aseres HaDibros, you lay in the Tam Elyon, but Parshas Yisro and Parshas Vaschanan, you lay in the Tam Tachtoin. The Sefer Ar Torah disagrees, and the Sefer Ar Torah says, we always lay in Tam Elyon. When you're Maver Sedra, you lay in Tam Tachtoin. By the way, it's important to know. Whenever you're Maver Sedra, you always do Tam Tachtoin. When you're laning, the Ar Torah says you always do Tam Elyon. That means Yisroi, Vaschanan, Shavuos, you're laning Dibroi Snapsuk. What does the Rambam hold you lane? Nowhere in all the writings of the Rambam does the Rambam ever mention Tam Elyon. You always lane Psukim like Psukim like Psukim. Says Reb Chaim Brisker, are you ready for this Go'inus? You're going to flip out. You're going to say it over at the table. They're going to, the fire is going to come down from Har Sinai. Says Reb Chaim, the Rambam holds you always lane Tam Tachtoin. If you're always laning Tam Tachtoin, what are you laning? Psukim. You can't stand for Psukim. If you're going to stand for Psukim, that's like saying, this Pasuk has more Kedusha than other Psukim. That's why the Rambam holds, you're not allowed to stand for the Aseres HaDibros. But the Rambam doesn't hold of Tam Elyon. We lane Tam Elyon. We're not laning Psukim. We're laning Dibros. We're commemorating Kabbalas HaTorah. As a Dibra, this Dibur has a Chashivos that this was Nimsar Misinai as representative of Taryag Mitzvahs. The Rambam's problem with standing is because the Rambam holds of Tam Tachtoin, says Reb Chaim Brisker. Tam Tachtoin are psukim. As a pasuk, you cannot give any more chashivos to Shema Yisrael over Uvnei Dan Chushem. Every pasuk in the Torah has equal kedusha. No pasuk is better than any other pasuk. So the Rambam holds of Tam Tachtoin. The Rambam says you can't stand, but we hold of Tam Elyon. Not only that, we always lay in Tam Elyon, not just Shavuos, Yisro, and Be'aschanan. That's why our Minogue is always to stand, not just Shavuos, but whenever we lay in the Aseres HaDibros. Because if we were just laying Psukim, then we would not be permitted to stand. But we make it clear on Shavuos, we're not laying Psukim. That's why we intentionally do a different trup. If we would be doing the trup of Psukim, we wouldn't be permitted to stand. That's why we deviate the trup to demonstrate, right now, we're not trying to lane psukim as psukim in the Torah. We're trying to reenact Kabbalas HaTorah. At Kabbalas HaTorah, the Rebbeinu Shem, would anybody say at Kabbalas HaTorah, what did Hashem give us? A lot of psukim? No. He gave us Aseres HaDibros. As a dibra, the dibra has a certain reflective capacity that it reflects all Taryag Mitzvahs. And this would be a beautiful explanation from the Sefer Harei Kedem in the name of Chaim Brisker. And I heard also somebody said over, I read in an article actually, someone said over this piece from the Harei Kedem to Reb Shmuel Birnbaum, Zechatzak L'Bracha, and Reb Shmuel said, this must have come from Reb Chaim Brisker. And it did. It did come. This is from Reb Chaim, a beautiful explanation to reconcile the Shita of the Rambam, the Teshuvas HaRambam, with Minogue Ashkenaz Rabbi Sai, Agun Yom Tov Chakoshu.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.